Okay. Just, I guess, say your name. You don't have to spell it. Say it and your PIN number.
I'm Jerry Naegeli, Beta Sigma 649.
Okay. And you pledged in what year?
Fall of 76.
And graduated in 80?
Spring of 79.
Spring of 79.
So I transferred from a junior college.
Oh, okay.
So I started as like a 21-year-old sophomore or junior.
Oh, okay. How was that? How was that starting and pledging as a 21-year-old as opposed to like being?
Well, I had a little more on the ball than like most incoming freshmen, and Rush was wide open back then. It was like 2 weeks of parties with bands and sororities and everything and alcohol. And what I did was I got a free room at the Theta Chi house at the other end of the row. And I would just each night go down the row, going to every house. And I always ended up at the Teak house, and I ended up staying there. And the guys here were a little more down to earth. They didn't all look alike like a lot of the other houses did. And they liked sports and they liked girls, and it was a fun place. And they also had the files and the academic stuff. So, but I transferred at 3.75. I was a California State Scholar, so I knew the school part wouldn't be hard for me. So.
Now, coming in with more like on the ball, with your priorities straight and whatnot, did you become a leader early on in the house?
Yeah, I was pledge class president, and then the first semester I was active, I was Hagemon, and then I was president, He Store. I was an IFC vice president, and I wrote and directed, performed some of the Songfest things we did, and I ran the sports program. I was the IFC vice president of athletics. I ran the sports program for the whole Greek system. There were 31 fraternities back then, so it was pretty big. There were 2 divisions.
Huh. How would you describe Teak's relationship with the rest of the row from 76 to 79?
Well, it was I don't know. It was a funny thing. Everyone. This is the 70s, and disco. The scourge of disco was very big then, and we had live rock bands, And everyone in a lot of the houses, like the SAEs and stuff, they seemed to look all alike, and we were all different. We had every kind of guy in this house. We had varsity athletes, ROTC guys, hippies. We had guys in the marching band. We had row gods. We had guys that didn't want to have anything to do with it. We had this great diverse atmosphere of all these guys. And, but it was a tight brotherhood because we'd all been through a really strenuous pledge program, and we'd all gone through the same thing with all the traditional stuff that you've probably heard about. And I know that a lot of fraternities that had to play sports against us didn't like us or were afraid of us because they knew we were psychotic and violent. And I know the DJs didn't like us because they were next door to us and they heard all the noise. But ask the Alpha Chi's how they feel about living next to the SAEs, and they'll do the same thing. But yeah, I would say most people probably didn't know about us that well, and if they did, they knew we were a smaller house that played with the big boys, and we took care of ourselves. We did all right.
Mm-hmm. So you guys were pretty tight, being a smaller house?
That was probably the best thing about it, is the tight brotherhood. And it really didn't have that much to do with the size of the house, but I think the pledge program, and that everyone went through the same thing, and it was strenuous and rigorous, and I still believe that's a good idea,
Did you guys have more of a strenuous program than we have now? Like, did you guys have the ball and chain?
Oh yeah, we had everything.
Really?
We had lineups and weekly quizzes and scavenger hunts and a pledge ditch, and then we had fire chief, which they don't do anymore, which some of the other guys can tell you about, I guess. And formal and informal initiation, and the big test at the end, and you had to make a paddle for your big brother, and there was a ritual paddling at the party, and I guess you could call it hazing, but I thought it was a good thing to put everyone through because you could find out the guys that weren't going to stay when things got tough. Either they quit or got voted out, or at least you found out at what point certain guys were going to quit. And it was a good thing to learn about guys, and a good thing to learn about yourself too. And now that I'm a lot older, I don't really find any worthwhile organizations that don't have some kind of a testing thing at the beginning to see when you're a newcomer how you're going to fit in, or if you will.
How would you? Did you actually going off the smaller house thing? Did you guys feel any pressure during Rush to try and become a bigger house?
Well, yeah, that was one of the problems that the house did have was we needed help in Rush. The house was in a state of disrepair, which was partially our fault because we were animals and destroyed the house regularly. And but I mean, these were men, these were guys. These were red-blooded American guys. They caused wear to the house. And back then, the way the Greek system was set up, the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. So if you had a big house and you were doing well, the money was rolling in, you could refurbish and keep doing. And the rush rules kind of lent themselves in favor of the bigger houses. So we had to really struggle for everything. And there was another thing going on, is if you looked like everybody else, you could pledge a bunch of guys that looked just like you, you know. But if you were different and it was tough to get into your house, not only was it tough for you to survive the pledge program, but you were a little more selective of the guys you took, because they were going to be your tight brothers, you know, against some pretty strong odds. And you know, we could have, I guess we could have worked harder for letting in more guys or taking better care of the house, but you know, we were guys and caused a lot of wear.
How would you describe the direction of the house?
That's a good question. When I joined, there was about 50 guys in the house, and we were taking about, I don't know, 6 or 7 guys in the fall, and like 5 or 6 in the spring. We'd had a big pledge class in fall of '75, and they only took 1 guy the next spring. My pledge class in the fall of '76 had 10 guys in it, and they either kicked out or quit down to 2. And we went through a pretty rough program, but you know, 50% of my pledge class is still active. I'm on the board, you know. So, and Scott Pride, my pledge brother, would still be active if he lived closer and wasn't married and settled down and everything. But in a lot of ways, we were a good sports house. We were a good social house. We were a dominant Songfest house. We did Songfest with the Thetas. We were like the 2nd best sorority here at the time, and we had like a 50-man house, which was kind of amazing. Because, you know. And then academics, we did all right. We had 1 or 2 Phi Beta Kappas every year. We had varsity athletes in the house. In a lot of ways, we did really well, socially and athletically, and the grades were there. And we threw the best parties on the row, without a doubt. But the Delts at the time, who were like our biggest rivals for being like the party wild man house, they ran the row run, and so nothing ever good was said about us in there. And the other fraternities didn't like us. We were constantly getting in fights in the front yard, and every time we played sports with somebody, and you know. But that's, you know, boys will be boys, you know.
Uh-huh. Now, those were really dynamic times for both the row and teak. Can you like divulge a little bit on like, you know, how like maybe society in general, like the whole disco revolution and all that stuff, kind of carved out, you know, where the members went and who you rushed?
Yeah, it was an interesting time. You know, the country was going through some weird things too. It was the '70s, the late '70s. I mean, I was in high school. I was a freshman in high school in 1969. You know, and one of my biggest things worrying about was that I could go to college a couple years of junior college before I went to Vietnam, so I'd at least be like better than a PFC. Then the war ended, and then it never came about. But those were intense times. The sexual revolution was wide open, not like now. Drugs were rampant, and you know, there was the big hair and the sideburns and the whole horrible disco thing. But we were more into the LA hard rock scene here, which is funny when you have an exchange with an SC sorority and they want to hear it, like, you know, Do the Hustle, and we were having like some band playing Black Sabbath. So but we did have a disco party every once in a while as kind of a joke, where we all dressed up like fools. It was pretty funny. But at that time in the university, the president, Hubbard, was a totally pro-Greek, pro-student, pro-athletics, fun kind of president, which I think, I have to say, the last 2, in my opinion, have been anti-Greek, especially the one we have now. There were 31 fraternities, then there's like, what, 12 now? You know,
Yeah,
and 20. Okay. And I mean, Rush was wide open. It was 2 weeks of wild parties with like a 5-figure budget. You know, there was alcohol, live bands. You could have like up to like 4 exchanges. And it was like a wide open, wild thing. And competing on that level with the big guys was tough. But we did all right because we had the best parties, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think any guy that wants to join a fraternity wants to join a fraternity that has tradition and history and plays sports and likes girls and has a good social agenda. So we did all right. It was a wild time.
So I mean, everything seemed like it was going really well. What happened to make like what I call the crash?
We did need help with Rush, and we needed some money put into the house. And as you get down from like 50 to like 40 guys, we had some big graduating classes because there were bigger pledge classes before. You start not bringing enough money to do the maintenance. I don't know. I was never involved with the board of control at that point. You know, I was more concerned with in the house and row things. And the house was in a state of disrepair. Our fault because we destroyed it as well. And things were getting worse and worse. I got the membership like slowly declined, and then we had, after I graduated, I guess they had one big graduation, and there was something like down to like 30 guys. And I guess the board decided now would be a good time to bring in some help from national and have what they considered a reorganization to like. And what I heard was they were going to come and help us with the things we needed help in, keep what we were doing right, and help us. But it didn't turn out that way. The guy they sent from national was, I don't know, the nicest thing I could say about the guy was he was mentally ill. And his idea was to just destroy everything and start over from scratch. And his first move was to kick everyone out of the house. And he threw all the trophies, the scrapbooks, the plaques we got from the city council, a bound gold leaf book of the first 50 years of TKE signed by Ronald Reagan and the expansion leaders, if you can believe that. He threw that away. All the trophies we were in, all the scrapbooks, in the dumpster. He said there were pictures of people being hazed in there. You know, all that stuff's going to end now. You know,
even the stuff from the 50s and all that stuff?
Yeah, all of that stuff. Well, if the stuff didn't look too innocuous, like a black and white picture of, you know, of the red carnation from the 50s, you know, that didn't look too bad. If there was a picture of a lineup or something like that, the whole scrapbook was gone. You know, it seemed like everything up until he got here was evil and had to go. And he kicked all the guys out, and he let a few of them come back if they went through interviews and had to ask all these questions about who was using drugs. And the whole drug thing was used as a scapegoat to do this. And I'd like to set the record straight on that. If we had a drug problem in this house, so did every house in this row, and probably you know, the whole country. You know, we had like maybe, I don't know, 40% of the guys recreationally used marijuana. That was probably a low figure for the country, you know. And we also had varsity athletes and ROTC guys who couldn't, you know, but they were all brothers, you know. And we never were blatant about it, and we never like shoved it in anyone's face, and we were always discreet. And there was also a hell of a lot of drinking and a lot of premarital sex, and I didn't see anyone complaining about that, you know. But it's funny, they chose that one thing as everyone can rally behind that and say, let's kick everybody out. And it was like a nightmare. And I was living in the house, even though I had graduated the year before, as a boarder that summer. And I first tried to help this guy, and this little henchman that he brought along with him was also psychotic. And I began to realize that they were nuts, and they were just destroying the place. And that, you know, I went into the dumpster myself and saved all the scrapbooks and all the trophies I could and brought them back in and hid them in the house, hid them in the basement, hid them in the attic. And all the things that disappeared again after that, either they found again and threw out, or the recent alumni took for safekeeping. And I have a feeling a lot of that stuff now, the 50th anniversary is coming up, and the house is doing really well now. I have a feeling some of those things are going to come back.
Huh. Is there like an organized effort to try and get some of that stuff back?
Yeah, there is. And yeah, I can say, you know, on camera, that some of these things are going to come back definitely before the 50th anniversary.
Huh.
And I would say to anyone out there watching this, if you were there when it happened and you took stuff for safekeeping, I'm glad you took it, and I'm glad that it didn't get thrown away or lost. But I think now is the time to bring it back. And although the first few years in the 80s were the guys that this guy had brought in, you know, didn't want to go back to the old traditions, didn't want to go back to the old history, were taught that that was all evil. And I was there every day, like telling them these weren't bad guys, they were good guys. And you know, the guys that are in the house now don't think that way. And it was a struggle at first to tell these people that we were not like psychopathic, drug addict maniacs. They were actually good guys. You know, we did well academically, we did well socially. We always had knights and squires and a couple of IFC officers. I myself was in Order Omega with a couple other guys from the house. I was Blue Key. The president of the university named me an outstanding graduating senior with 26 other guys. So, you know, it's not like we were all a bunch of long-haired derelicts. I mean, you know, I had short hair and I was clean shaven back then. But, yeah, it's funny, that big misconception. It was all a big, horrible mess. There were some things that were wrong. We needed help with Rush. We needed help with fixing up the house. But we didn't need to kick everyone out and throw out all the traditions and history and all the secret stuff that we really love if we were in a fraternity, especially this one. And it was just an unfortunate tragedy. And I think the house fought to come back from that until about the mid-'80s, when some officers came by that joined the house and became officers who were interested in bringing back some of those traditions and having a pledge program and having, you know, some of the history and some respect for the alumni and those that already paid the price to be in the house. And then things kind of turned around and got better. And it's been growing steadily ever since. But I mean, after the first reorganization was so badly done, we had to have another one like a couple years later. And when he kicked out the 30 guys, he ended up bringing in 19. I don't know how 19 is better than 30. And it was really sad for me. A couple of the guys he pledged were seniors who just needed a place to stay. One of them was a Sigma Nu pledge. And I'll never forget the lowest moment of my life in the fraternity was I was in the 9-0 and I saw one of our pledge pins stuck in the wall and I had to dig it out with a pocket knife because this guy was handing out pledge pins like nothing. You know, and he finally got his little henchman to round up some of the guys from the house because I was disagreeing with him too much, and had him come over to my room in East and take the door off the hinges, and they were going to physically throw me out. And I called the cops, and the cops came and said, "You can't do that." And this little maniac henchman he had threw me down the stairs a couple of times. And I thought, you know, well, I could mop the floor with this guy, but I'm not going to do it. You know, and I said to the guys who were watching this, "I'm sorry you're seeing this. This is not what this fraternity is about." And then you could see them turning. They said, "We're not going to be a part of this," you know. And the cops came, told them they couldn't do it. I called the regional vice president at Cal State Fullerton. He came down and told the guy he had to leave, go back to National. He was getting too many complaints. He did things like he called the mom who was in charge of the Mothers Club, whose son was the cleanest, straightest arrow you ever saw in your life, and said, "Your son's been removed from the fraternity for drug use. We want all the money from the Mothers Club now. You're no longer in the Mothers Club." He did that, if you can believe that. He had people's tires slashed. He had people beat up by this little maniac he brought with him. Mail was stolen. It was horrible, you know, and people's reputations were ruined. And I remember at the time there was a little group of guys that said, if they want to start over, let's burn the house to the ground and let them start over from scratch. And like they were bitter and pissed off, and I don't blame them, and they've never been apologized to. And I used to say, listen, once rational, good guys get back in the house that are teaks, that'll go through the program, you know, they're not going to stand for this stuff, and it'll all be straightened out. And it's still going on to this day.
Our scroll starts now, I believe, at 7:20, I think, somewhere around there. Do you know what happened with, was that also thrown out?
Yeah, it was thrown out, and I saved it. And then I hid it somewhere. And then it disappeared again. Now, I found out through other guys, because I'm not that trusted by these guys who think I'm siding with National and stuff, because I'm still here, that the scroll, they have it, they know where it is. There's 2 scrolls, actually. And I think I can almost guarantee that those things will be returned by the 50th anniversary.
Oh, that'd be great.
Along with some other things, which would be good. And you know, I can't blame those guys for taking those things. I pray that the scrapbooks that I'm in, that where all my college memories are in there, and I can vividly picture every page, you know, of what we were doing, and then the memories are in. Those are gone now forever, right? If they were thrown away or stolen. But if guys from the house took them, then there's always a chance they can come back, or at least, even if we never see them again, at least the guy who appreciates them has them. You know, and that was great. It was a rough time. It was a horrible time. For a long time, it was like the worst thing in my life. But you know, I've been a lucky guy and had a pretty easy life.
So after all that, why come back and serve on the board? What makes you want to come back?
Well, I mean, I joined the fraternity, and I went through a brutal pledge program, and I played sports, and I got in fights, and I drank and partied and studied and worked with these guys, and they're still my best friends, and the guys that I still hang out with, I always stand up for them at their weddings, and you know, I joined the fraternity for life, you know, and just because some maniac came in from National, I kind of even don't want to believe that National is screwed up, that it was just one guy and he was nuts, and I know it was his first assignment, and I know he doesn't work for National anymore, so maybe that was just a problem, you know. But it's my fraternity, and I joined it because I thought it was the best fraternity on the row. And it's the one I wanted to be in, and I still do. And I don't regret a damn thing, you know. And if you told me when I joined the house, you're going to have a great 3 years, and then a year after you graduate, someone's going to come in and destroy the whole place, and it's going to start over from nothing and claw and scratch its way back to the top, I'd still join this house. You know, the guys that were in there were great guys, and we had some good times and some bad times, and it was just a great experience for me. And I actually had like 3 lives in the fraternity. The time that I was like a pledge and an active, and then the time after the reorganization when I would come by every day and try and help them and coach them in the football games and tell them how to do a pinning and try and bring back some of the things that this guy left them with nothing. And then there's the 3rd life is what I am now, which is a guy in the Board of Trustees, and just trying to lend whatever experience I can, or try and, you know, throw in a rational voice now and then whenever we go off on something. So, you know.
If you could describe the chapter in 3 words, when you were in it.
I don't know. It's like it's funny because it's like actually choking me up. It's like the time of my life. You know, it was like the greatest memories I've ever had of my life. You know, and I've done some pretty wild and amazing things in my life. And I'd have to rank those 3 years. And you know, it's funny. Years later, a bunch of us were out drinking, and one of my buddies said, "Wouldn't you trade everything to just go back for one day?"
Huh.
And we kind of go, "Yeah." So I remember times that like the greatest weekend of my life in the fraternity. We won Songfest in the Hollywood Bowl on like a Friday night, and no sorority would do it with us that year because we had lost the year before with the Thetas, right? So we did it by ourselves. You know, some of the lower sororities were going to do it with us, but we didn't ask them. We did it by ourselves, and we made this. It was a funny thing. I actually played a girl, and some of the Thetas from the year before put my makeup on, and they put it on permanently, which was kind of funny. And we came back to the house with the trophy. We won, and we had a great party next door with a big name LA band, the Pop. I don't know if you've heard of them. They were named one of the top 100 bands in LA from the 70s. And I had a girlfriend at the time that was pimped too. It was great. And she was the sweetheart. I was president of the house. It was like this. I was this great where I could do no wrong. Everything was great. The next day we had to play the ATOs, a playoff game in softball to see who would go to the finals. And I had to get up in the morning, hungover, go down there, and I had red lips and eyelashes on and this big red thing here. And we beat him so badly that this guy from their house who was in the IFC with me came over and he asked me if we could slow it down and not run up the score on him. And it was just like a great feeling. And we beat him, went on to the playoffs, and you know, we beat the Sig Eps for third, and it was, which was always fun. And we always beat those guys, and it was just a great time. In the sports especially, because I could play every sport in the house, and you know, there was a large house and a small house division, and although we were small enough in terms of, you know, size to play in the small house division, which we would have dominated, we refused to go down there. So we were usually the smallest house in the large house. We were coming up against 100-man houses every time we played anybody, anything, and it was just so great to beat those guys, and the look of frustration on their face, you know, and you know, with our little handmade uniforms and everything, and it was just that was great stuff. And some of the most fun of my life. And yeah, I'll never forget those years. And there's another great thing about it that I always think about, that song. They can't take that away from me. Because all these things that came after, and when guys were saying, you know, he's a drug addict and he wrecked the house, and these guys were all terrible and don't listen to anything he says. And I'd be pleading with them saying, you know, that's not true. You know, how did we have 2 Phi Beta Kappas in my senior year? How did we have the president of the Honor Society for Accounting? You know, how come I was an IFC officer and another guy, and we were all in these organizations, we had varsity athletes, we were winning Songfest, you know, how could we be so bad if this was, you know, if this is true? You know, a brilliant strategy, throw away the trophy so no one can prove this, but they all came back, except the ones that, you know, that didn't. And I just remember, I would think, you know, no matter what happens, they can't take away from any of us those great memories and the great things we did and all the fun we had. And it was the time of my life, and no one can take it away. I just hope that in the future, and it's always going to be my goal until I die, is to get the good names of those guys back and to clean their reputations, because they didn't do anything wrong. And they did a great job against incredible odds. And it was really an amazing, heroic, noble thing to see when we would beat some big house in something, or we would dominate in Songfest. And even the people in the Songfest committee were against us because they were from the bigger houses. And you know, trying to get someone in an honorary society and everyone's voting against you, and you got to, you know, be so overwhelmingly good that you get in. You know, every day was a struggle, and I think that just made us better, and it made us a tighter, more unified group, and that was a great thing.
If you could pick one thing that you got out of TKE that you cherish the most, what do you think that would be?
Well, those memories of all the great things. But another good thing being in a fraternity teaches you, especially this one, because I always love that statement, you know, not for wealth, rank, or honor, but for personal worth and character, where it wasn't, you know, SC at that time was a rich kids' party school, and I'm sorry, that's true, you know. Maybe that's
still is.
Maybe, well, it's changed a little now, but with the new president who doesn't want there to be any fun of any kind, but wants us to have a nice cyclotron. But I always thought, you know, we don't look like these party people. I'm not driving a BMW. I'm here on a scholarship. I'm working refereeing football games to make $25 so I can have a beer Friday night, you know, or buy some food. And we didn't look like all the rest of them. We didn't all look the same. We were all different, and we all had different opinions from like ROTC guys to like varsity athletes, everything. And we all came together and worked together. And one of the great things that this place taught me was how to work with people, especially even people that don't agree with you. And there were some hideous political fights in the fraternity all the time because of all the divergent attitudes. But that's one of the great things. It taught me how to work with a different group of people and to all work together to get to one goal and get something done. And that, I think, will help anybody in any way. It's like they say in the Black Book about the values of membership: to furnish a college home, overcome provincialism, teach business training, stuff like that. I think one of the big ones is learning to overcome people's differences, even when they disagree with you, and work together. And now I have 100 or so friends that I can always count on for anything, and then they can count on me too. I sure go to a lot of their weddings, and I hang out with them when they get divorced too. So.
Is there anything else you'd like to add? I think that's it for questions.
That light's blinking. Does that mean anything? It's just sort of blinking now.
That just means... Yeah, that means you... No, that's wrong. It just started. Right? It just started blinking.
Just when you asked that question, it started blinking. Is this making sense? Am I sounding okay?
No, you got some really good stuff in there. Stuff I already know what I'm going to use.
Is there still film in that thing?
Yeah, it's still recording, but it's saying no tape.
But it is recording?
Yeah, my time's going by. Watch it.
Okay. Yeah, I just would like to say for all the young guys coming up watching this, and even the older guys too, don't believe the negative things you heard about the late 70s before the reorganization. Talk to someone who was there, and try to remember that these guys did nothing wrong, that they did everything they could to make this a good house, and they worked damn hard to get in it and to keep it going. And just remember that these are like your grandparents or like your parents. And they went through some tough times against big odds and did the best they could. And they should get that respect.
All right. Okay, go ahead and say what you had to say before.
Yeah, I would just like to say, for the young guys coming up and the older guys too, to remember that these guys from the 70s, don't believe the negative things you heard about them. They weren't a bunch of drug addicts. They weren't a bunch of screw-ups. The history of the house shows that, that they weren't. And the thing is, these guys paid a big price to get into the house, and they did the best they could and worked as hard as they could. And they were treated pretty badly. And they've never been apologized to or anything. And you should think of them as like your grandparents or your parents that came before you and did all the same things that they hoped you would do. And they should be forgiven, but they shouldn't even have to ask for that forgiveness. They should just be respected, because they're Teeks and Beta Sigma Teeks, and they went through it and did the best they could. I just think till I'm dead, I'll be trying to get that said and that thing straightened out.
Is there anything else? Is that, since we have 2 more minutes? Or?
2 more minutes. I would also say to the young guys coming on that these years you have in college go really fast and then they're gone, and then it's the real world after that. So you better make sure you have as much fun as you can. do everything you can. Make sure you don't. The worst thing you could do is when you graduate, look back and go, God, I should have done this. I should have played this sport, or I should have gone out for this office, or I should have asked that girl out. You better not have any regrets when you get out, because after you get out of here, it's the real world, And just you'll be counting every day that you were here and thinking how great it was. So you better make sure you get the fullest out of it you can.